Good morning, everyone. It's Nick Augustine with Mark Scroggins from Scroggins Law Group, and we are here with an update on what is going on in divorce and family law. And let's say good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing well, and we got the blue shirt memo. So
Apparently, yeah, I just noticed that. That is
yeah,
something else.
I have some blue shirts. What can you say? So
So let's talk a little bit about what's going on. As everybody can see, this is different. The second one, and I'm not looking like a hobo here this time. But second time that we're doing this Zoom meeting, and so a lot of things have changed. During this lockdown business, and Zoom seems to be what is being utilized the most by the courts, and in other situations. Now, I mean, we're set up, as I think I'd mentioned before. We've always been set up to work remotely. We didn't actually use Zoom before. We used Skype and FaceTime and some other things as well. But Zoom has become more popular now, as everybody knows. If you've read anything, Zoom has also gotten just donkey kicked with their problems with security. And so there have been updates recently. I had another update today. There was a big update that was on this past Friday that was trying to keep people from what they call Zoom bombing things, which is where they would all of a sudden get into a meeting and could take over the host position and nobody could take it back. And they'd start throwing up porn or all kinds of different stuff, which obviously can be a little bit of a shock to the senses if that's not what you are expecting. I understand that has been happening had been happening in a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. So I'm not aware of where it has happened in any court proceedings as of yet, but I think additional things are happening there. So
that happened to one of my friends who's on the city council in Denton, was hosting a meeting about questions people had about what's going on right now and everything, and he had people come in and hijack the audio and everything. So what concerns, if any, for people who are using Zoom with clients and whatnot, if they ask, what do I need to do to be safe and secure?
Well, so here's the biggest thing. If anybody's ever used this or WebEx or Join Me or any of those, you're familiar with, you get a meeting ID, right? And so that is a series of numbers that is the meeting that you are attending. And sometimes they had a password and sometimes they did not have a password. And so I think, a lot of the times they did not require the password and Zoom didn't require it. And I think that's where a lot of people were running into problems. You can also run into problems where people were then taking, let's say that a password was issued, they were posting it on a Facebook page or posting it on a website. And so, yeah, exactly. So
skywriting, there's the password.
Right. So as people can see, like when I'm talking, the little box lights up around me, and in the, you can see my name for part of the time, Mark Scroggins. And when you talk, it switches over and does the same thing with you. So one thing I would suggest to people is, if you're doing this, whether it's, a happy hour via Zoom. I did a firm happy hour last week, and it was really surprisingly entertaining, so people are in their respective places, having whatever their drink of choice is, and just getting to enjoy each other. And I think people have been doing that a lot as well. So here's the thing I would suggest. Make sure that you are only providing that information to the people that are in your group, okay? And that it's not posted on a website or on Facebook or via Twitter or something like that, because that's very easy to get intercepted. And so also, look for the people that are in your meeting. If you see someone that it just shows up saying iPhone or iPad or, X43291, immediately ask who that person is or exclude them. The host has the ability to do that. Or if there's a waiting room, sometimes if there's an additional requirement of registration, they can keep them from ever getting in. So just stay vigilant of that kind of stuff, and you should be fine. I think one of the important things is to make sure that we do have interaction with one another. It's kind of, I always joke around and say I couldn't live in the Pacific Northwest because as beautiful it is as it is when it is not raining, it rains too damn much, and that doesn't work well for me. As far as it's depressing to me, and I don't do well with that. Well, you can run into the same things. Depression can really hit people when you're isolated, and
Yeah.
so. I'm here with my wife, and my daughter who's in law school is actually here because the University of Texas, is doing all their classes remotely, and all this happened over what was her spring break. And so she's been staying here and continuing to do everything. But there's some of us, who are there all by themselves. And so that's hard, and so I would suggest that as good members of society, it behooves us to reach out to others and ask, how are you? And not just the bullshit, how you doing kind of thing that we ask, where we're hoping, please God, don't let them actually tell me I was just trying to be nice. But to actually be concerned about others and, hey, how you doing?
Right.
I think the Zoom stuff or FaceTime or Skype or WebEx or any of those, I really like those because there's something different about actually seeing a person as compared to just hearing their voice. So that is one thing that I would say that is probably a good thing to do. So if you are at home and all it's just you and the kids, make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Reach out to others. Don't try to be a hero. Make sure that you're doing okay, because when you're locked up all the time, it's rough. Even just a little walk outside where you can see others can really be helpful.
And exercise, I can't stress enough. And yesterday when I took my boat out in the lake, make sure everything works right, and I had the audacity to brave the cold water. Cold water wasn't actually that bad, but I was in the water for a little bit. And then I noticed when I was climbing from the ski ladder from the back of the boat and trying to climb back up onto the boat was much harder than it normally is. And I realized it's because my exercise has been going from my home office to my kitchen to the car to go to Chick-fil-A and back. I need to start getting out and walking. And a lot of people just getting out and getting that fresh air and that sun, it's a great relief. The other day I drove and took a picture. The boat ramp was open just to get out and see some fresh air and sun. And it's an amazing difference. And there's people out walking around and all this. And, when you talk about some of the people at home, especially if I think of a single mom with some kids who's at home right now, maybe going through a divorce or going through anything. And if you watch the news or interact with people on social media, you're getting a whole different variety of information and thoughts as to what's going to happen, what we can expect. Some people are talking about extending shutdowns for a much longer time. And people are already going through a tough enough time before this. I just have to be wondering, we're at that point of how many weeks in that people are starting to snap. And we even had a person who was a jumper over at 121 in the tollway the other day.
Wow, I did not hear about that, but
yeah.
But that doesn't surprise me. I mean, this just goes, I've always had a bit of the lone wolf kind of deal. So I've got a very, very relatively small group of very, very, very close friends. And then I have a lot of people that are friends, but not to the same degree. But it has shown me just how important, the social aspect of life is, and the little things that you miss, like going and sitting in a restaurant, going to a football game, as you know, and probably most people that know me at all know, I am the biggest University of Texas junkie there is. I'm third generation to go. My daughter's fourth. I mean, you cut me, I bleed burnt orange. And I got to tell you, I'd be going down for the Texas spring football game, and there's just different stuff like that. We'd be getting into here pretty quickly playoff basketball, and while I'm generally not a big basketball fan, I enjoy doing some of that kind of stuff, and It doesn't break my heart that baseball isn't playing because I don't really care about it. It's too slow for me. But I shouldn't say that. I enjoy it every once in a while. But it just shows how important it is that we mix with others. With the being locked up, so to speak, it's kind of like when you're sick, okay? When you're sick, emotions run higher. It's the same thing when you're locked up and your mobility is cut back. You know, the emotions run higher. You're not as patient with other people. You know, you can be prone to depression. You know, so do a little self-wellness check and realize that, you know, what your head is telling you might not be the truth, and check in with others, talk to others. Now, so those are just some little tips. I think the exercise is huge. As we've talked about before, you know, I've got a home gym because, you know, I belong to Lifetimes. I belong to Cowboys because of the Cowboys Club and stuff. And I never, you know, I used them, but I was too damn busy to get there as much as I wanted.
Right.
So having the home gym is really helpful for me. And one of the best things I've ever bought is a Peloton bike. And that thing is phenomenal. And so here's the thing. If you've got the money to be able to do that, there are deals to be had right now on these with a lot of, you know, 0% financing and freebies for a period of time. So there are things out there that you can utilize. But the easiest one is what you talked about, which is just go outside and walk. You know, a 30-minute walk 3 days a week, you know, makes a huge difference if you listen to the American Heart Association and some others.
Well,
you know, so
especially right now when people are going for comfort food and comfort beverages. And I posted the other day, I said, if you are having too much comfort food and comfort beverages in drive-through, you know, like our sugar levels have got to be, I mean, we got to like all watch, we're all going to be like, you know, battling diabetes before this is done.
Well, that's very true.
Eat healthy.
I mean, yeah, it's something different. So this lockdown does two different things. It can either make or break your marriage or your relationship. It can also make or break the relationship that you have with your former spouse or, you know, other parent with your kids. You know, I am seeing that some people are really trying to use the coronavirus to jack with the other parent. And I was reading something in a group that I'm on Facebook with a bunch of other family lawyers that was talking about someone keeping a child away because there had been a distant touch with someone who had tested positive for corona, but not you know, not the other parent, not something like that, where it was just like, no, I'm withholding, I'm not going to turn them over. And you know, it doesn't have anything to do with the science. It has everything to do with jacking with that other person. So think long and hard before you do something like that. Make sure you call a lawyer that knows what the hell they're doing, that can walk you through that, and talk about how is a judge, once they get to this, how is a judge going to react to that? Okay. I've also seen some things that are really, really cool that people have done, where you've had some doctors and nurses that are treating people that are sick with, you know, COVID-19. And so what they have done is they have said, I'm not going to, you know, you're going to go stay at your other parent's house until all this shit blows over. And we know that, you know, I'm safe, which means that you're safe and not at a heightened risk of getting it. That is the epitome of co-parenting and doing the right thing, you know? So, so there are lots of good and bad there.
Yeah, you also wonder if people are going to say, well, temporary insanity. I didn't know what I was doing. I was all, you know, I wasn't in my right mind. Sorry, my blood sugar was too high. Oops.
You know, that's interesting. That doesn't come into play on the civil side, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if that comes up on the criminal side. Hell, we ought to bring Bruce Isaacs in here and ask him if he has heard of anybody using the COVID-19 defense.
That's a good idea.
You know, so I think it's really, really interesting. And is possible to, would be possible to do. So very, very interesting. So, but let me just reassure everybody out there that, look, if you are in a bad situation and you need to do something about it, you still can. Okay. If you are, if you are subject to family violence, and they call it family violence because that also encompasses anybody that's in the household, and so if, you need something like that, the courts are dealing with all of those things. Okay. The courts are dealing with them in different ways, depending on what county you're in and what particular court you're in. I think, Collin County and Denton County are a little ahead of Dallas as far as the adoption of the video hearings and stuff. So it seems that it got rolled out to them quicker. So they are handling things a lot more quickly. Dallas was, at least, and I'm not sure if they still are trying to do this, but they were at least doing some of these essential hearings, which would include protective orders or family violence type situations. Or if you think about child endangerment in the family court situation, a child endangerment situation, they were actually doing some of those in person. So I think that is getting to be more difficult in light of, how tight the lockdown has been, and 10 people, and how do you do that, and how exactly do you figure out 10 people? Is that, in a courtroom, and how many people in the hallway? And, so it gets a little difficult. So, but most of this stuff
on the X's on the ground of where to stand, you stand over
right,
there, stand over there.
Right.
I mean, so not to be funny, but it's doable.
It is. Now, the other thing is, Collin County and Denton County are doing the vast majority of this stuff by Zoom, although there's some that are saying they'll do, I was on a video conference with a bunch of the courts in Denton the other day, and, a couple of the judges were saying, hey, we're down here ready to handle whatever we need to, as long as we don't have more than 10 people in our courtroom. And so, that tells you that this all can be done. Now, your non-essential hearings, aren't going to happen. So what's a non-essential hearing? Well, typically temporary order hearings are not getting heard, at least in Collin County. In Denton County, I think that's a little different. A couple of the judges were saying that they've actually got time to handle some of those. So I don't know if that has changed, but that was the case as of about a week ago. So, you can find out this information by reaching out to, an attorney. And if you're in a situation where you need to do something, it can be done. Now, the other thing that you might want to do is, if you are like, okay, look, this being locked up has convinced me that this marriage or this relationship is going nowhere, you should talk to a lawyer about doing some planning. If it's like, okay, look, there isn't any family violence, and he or she may be an asshole, but I'm not ready to do something right now, because trying to force a move out or doing something after, something has actually been filed is difficult when we're still living under the same roof. You can do some divorce planning. Okay. And what do I need? What do I need to get a hold of from an evidentiary standpoint? Are there lots of separate property claims? Do you own a business? Do you own 23 businesses? Do you own rental properties? When were the rental properties bought? So all kinds of different things that are important to look at that you can do as far as planning goes.
About people who might have had a job loss along the way. I mean, most of us are lucky enough that what we're doing is, we're still going with everything. But if you had someone who was a spouse who had a restaurant that's running out of supplies, not able to keep up, all of a sudden everything can be well. I mean, that things like that can really test a marriage. So I wonder.
It can. I really feel for those people that are in the service business. And when I say service, I mean, we're in the service business too. But I'm thinking, I was thinking more along the lines of, I'm sorry, I just had something come across my screen. I hate it. I can't get that to quit doing that. And now I've just lost my train of thought.
People in the service industry lost their jobs.
Oh yeah, so restaurants more so. So like where you said where they can't get the supplies. The supplies I don't think are really the problem now. The issue is, with people not being able to come down and go to lunch or go to dinner. I mean, with the takeout, curbside, or delivery, those are what the options are now. And so Linda and I went and picked something up from a little place the other day, and there were three people working. So if you think about what does their staff typically look like,
right?
It's at least 10, at least 10 to 15. I mean, I think about a number of other restaurants, and those people are hating it. So you got to hope that that the government is going to introduce something else that is going to help there. Let me make one other thing, and I'm sure everybody's probably heard this, but for friends and clients and folks out there who are business owners that are not in the restaurant industry, there are different options out there. There's this payroll protection plan that is in place. It's slow. You got to find a bank that is going to be able to help you out there, because you've probably read stories about like Bank of America and Wells Fargo and a bunch of others basically saying we're servicing our clients first before we take anybody that is not a current client. And then there are also the economic injury disaster loans associated with COVID that are available out there. There's some low overlap in what kind of monies those provide and for what, but they're both out there. Now, the one thing is, it is a first come, first serve. And so you need to hurry up and get in line. But those are some things that are out there. And I think I read something last night that was talking about the amount for these PPP loans that was set aside was $349 billion. And it has quickly been determined that that is not enough. And I read something yesterday talking about adding an additional $250 billion to it. So I don't know if that is something that they had where they could just apportion that differently, or if it's where they had to go back for, phase 4 as they have talked about. But the point is, do some research. It's easy for financial stresses really get to people, but do a little research. And there's some things out there, you hear about stuff with the mortgages and, getting some relief out there. I don't know to what extent that is correct or not. I imagine that you see more of that on the residential side than you do on the corporate side.
Mm-hmm.
So I can tell you that we've got our big offices in Frisco and Dallas, and I reached out to both of our landlords and asked, so what are y'all doing at this time? Are you just rolling rent payments to the end and basically extending the lease, since the offices can't really be used? And their answer was, nope. We've got obligations just like everybody else, so everything's got to be paid. So, I don't see there being a whole lot of relief in the commercial area unless those people are really their feet are held to the fire. And luckily, that's not an issue for us, but I still find it to be bad business on their part. Well, Nick, thank you. I hope this was helpful to a lot of folks. I mean, this was, not our typical Zoom podcast or podcast in general. That this was a little more touchy-feely, and everybody, take care of yourself, do those things that are necessary, because in this strange time, man, that is really important. And especially with people feeling down and getting depressed, and then the problem is that you feed that with other things, whether it's, alcohol or drugs or food or sex or gambling, and all of those can have serious ramifications to a relationship and to you personally. So take care of yourself, seek out the opportunities that are available out there. Most doctors and lawyers are up and doing, stuff via, some sort of teleconferencing. So there's stuff out there that can help. So reach out if you need it, and be safe.
All right. Well, Mark, good to see you, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nick.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.